Back in 2004, the Pokemon TCG looked very different. Cards were doing a lot less damage and had a lot less HP. However,
history's about to be made, huh?
With a deck only the Japanese player base knew about, and it was all thanks to one man. And this man accomplished something that still hasn't been replicated to this very day. So we're talking about a record that has stood for over 20 years since. So let's have a look at the man that should have been permabanned twice. So like I said before, back in 2004, the Pokemon TCG looked very different. Hitting for 60 damage was, well, pretty good, and the HP was much lower, with the top cards in format having about 150 or so HP. The Pokemon TCG was so different in fact that 2004 would be the first ever World Championships held. And while it looks pretty different to the World Championships we see today, all the classic criteria were there. An invitation system for players, so it was pretty exclusive. There were still 3 age divisions, and there were still players from all over the globe trying to win it all. And there were a few decks that players could use to try and take it all home. The Japanese player base were cooking up something terrible, something that no one really knew about. For the rest of the world though, the metagame looked like this. Gardevoir was one of the best decks around. Its feedback attack would add up scarily fast, dealing 1 damage counter for each card in your opponent's hand. Since Steven's advice was used as a staple in most decks, which drew a ton of cards, you could really catch your opponent off guard for big damage. That wasn't all though, since Storm could also slap your opponent straight to the discard pile. While 4 energy for a 10x multiplier, might sound kinda sad, back then that would add up really fast, since Storm would do 10 for each energy in play. There was even another Gardevoir card that you could use that had the Psy Shadow ability, that would let you attach a psychic energy from your deck to one of your Pokemon, then put 2 damage counters on it, letting you power up your EX even faster. Gardevoir EX was one of the best abusers of one of the best consistency cards I've ever seen, Delcatty and Magneton. Magneton would let you discard 1 card from your hand to get back 2 basic energy from your discard pile, and then Delcatty would let you discard an energy from your hand to draw 3 cards. Some decks would even play Oracle, which is basically Mallow, allowing you to grab 2 cards from your deck and put them straight to the top, so you could draw into them straight from the Delcatty. This combination is very strong, and I think it would still see play now if it was in format today. And Gardevoir would love having both of these 2 in play. Another deck that loved these was Mewtwo EX. This was a pretty straightforward deck, but it racked up damage fast, since Mewtwo had the attack energy absorption, which would let you attach 2 energy cards from your discard pile to itself. This would power up so fast, so you could start swinging with Psyburn for 60, which was a decent number at the time. If you wanted to hit for more damage, well, you had Gorbis, which for a water energy and a colourless, which could be satisfied with 1 double rainbow energy, did 20 plus 10 for each psychic energy in play. So you could use energy absorption with Mewtwo, then play a warp point to get Gorbis into the active, attach double rainbow energy, and start swinging for massive damage. And since Mystic Water counts all psychic energy in play, not just yours, Gorbis' damage would get silly versus Gardevoir. Speaking of silly, we have to look at Exploud next, an awesome card that had 4 attacks. The first one is the one we're most interested in, however, Breaking Sound, which would do 10 damage to each one of your opponent's Pokemon. This doesn't sound like a lot, but when almost every deck was playing Delcatty, and by extension Skitty, and other evolving basic like Ralts, this would add up pretty quick. Base control would also provide more targeted spread, dealing 30 to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Even Thunderous Roar was useful, since the confusion that it would inflict would set your opponent back and give you more time to use Breaking Sound. You even had Ancient Technical Machine Rock, which gave you the Attack Stone Generator for 1 colourless energy, which read if your opponent has any evolved Pokemon in play, remove the highest stage evolution card from each of them and put those cards back into his or her hand. Perfect for this strategy. In order to buy the extra turns of spread needed, you would play Mr. Briny's Compassion, which would allow you to return one of your non-EX Pokemon cards and all cards attached to it back into your hand. The regarded best deck at the time though wasn't any of those. It was Blaziken. Blaze Kick from Blaziken EX would provide some early game tempo for 2 energy, dealing 50 damage or 30 with Burn. Volcanic Ash would also allow you to deal a massive 100 damage snipe to the bench. And the other Blaziken would help out attaching energy with its Fire Starter ability, allowing you to attach a fire energy from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. This Blaziken card could even adopt a similar strategy as Exploud, since its Fire Stream attack would deal 50 damage and then 10 to all of your opponent's benched Pokemon. Some Blaziken lists would even play Team Aqua's Manectric, since its Power Shift ability would allow you to move the energy attached from Firestarter from itself to an active Blaziken EX, so you could stream Volcanic Ash multiple times. You even had Rayquaza EX to provide some solid power with its Dragon Burst attack that did 40 for each dragon energy you discarded from it, which could often get out of hand. So after that roundup, what deck do you think is best? The format was honestly so wide open. There were a ton of decks I haven't even mentioned. One of those decks was the Japanese secret deck though, that no one saw coming. It was strong, deadly and fast, and it was ready to take the event by storm. But even for the few Japanese players who knew how strong the deck was, they wasn't ready for the absolute domination it was about to deal on the event. You see, their deck revolves around this absolute unit of a Pokemon, Magma's Groudon. You might recognise it since it was one of the cards featured in the Celebrations collection. And while its ability prevented it from attacking if there wasn't 3 or more Magma Pokemon in play, that was very easy to fulfill. Linear Attack was a very strong attack at the time, since for 2 energy, or 1 Team Magma energy, you would deal 20 damage to any one of your opponent's Pokemon. This would be very scary for Cedar and Skitty, and you could often pick up sneaky KOs or bring higher HP Pokemon down into range for Groudon's other attack, Pulverize! Which for 3 energy did 50 damage plus 20 if your opponent's active had any damage on it already. And when you look at the format, a basic Pokemon swinging for 70 damage is pretty mind-blowing. And we didn't just have to rely on linear attack to get that prerequisite damage in play, because the Japanese players were also playing Desert Ruins, which would put 1 damage counter on all the EX Pokemon in play that had a maximum HP of 100 or higher. This would give Pulverize even more reach. But it didn't stop there, because since Groudon was a dark type, and a fighting type, it could make use of special dark energy. This would give the dark Pokemon it's attached to an extra 10 damage for each one attached, making Pulverize have a realistic reach of 90 with Desert Ruins out and 1 special dark energy attached. All on a basic Pokemon too. This made Groudon a terrifying attacking Pokemon, but it was the support for Groudon that took it to the next level. Cards like Camerupt not only offered attacking fire typing, but also helped out with its ability Overheat, which would let you attach a basic energy from your discard pile and attach it to Camerupt, ready for immediate use. Flame Ball would also be good for attacking into a lot of the grass type attackers that people had in decks, like Blossom for example, because that saw a ton of play for its healing ability. So while Camerupt was useful on its own, it became really strong when paired with Claydol, since Claydol had the Magma Switch ability, which would allow you to move an energy from one of your Magma Pokemon to another Pokemon, meaning that you could swing with a Pulverize in 1 turn by attaching a Magma energy using Overheat to attach another energy and then use Magma Switch to move it from the Camerupt to the Groudon. Not only that, but because Claydol was a dark and psychic type at the same time, it made it very helpful for swinging into Gardevoir, since Gardevoir was weak to psychic. Since as long as you had more cards in hand than them, Dark Hand would swing for 120 damage, which again you could bolster via Special Darkness Energy and Desert Ruins. You even had Zangoose, which could help out with his Call for Family to help set your board up, and could even swing with Team Pact if needed. That wraps up the Pokemon in this deck, but it's the supporters and items where it starts to get silly. Starting off with Team Magma Ball, which let you search your deck for any Team Magma Pokemon on a coin flip, or if it was Tails, you can search your deck for a basic Magma Pokemon. Team Magma Conspirator would let you grab any 2 in combination of Magma Basic Pokemon or Basic Energy cards. This would keep
ticking over nicely.
But if we was to look at this Japanese Magma list that did well, you would see that there is a 1-2 line of the Camerupt. That is very odd. Why would you only have 1 Numel but 2 Camerupt? Since if you was to prize that Numel, you could never get Camerupt into play, and we know how strong Camerupt is. So why is this? Well, it all comes down to the whole maestro himself, the leader of Team Magma, and the card that made the Magma deck so explosive, Maxi. Maxi would let you search your hand or discard pile for any Team Magma Pokemon and put them straight into play. If they were the stage 2 Pokemon, put 2 damage counters on them. This would allow you to burst a Claydol or Camerupt into play in a single turn, making for some very explosive and unpredictable turns. Maxi was the wild card in the deck, catching everyone by surprise in 2004, And it was this unpredictability and surprise aspect that made the Magma deck so unstoppable. So strong in fact that it did something that no other deck has managed to do since, in the close to 20 years of Pokemon TCG action since that World Championships. The Magma deck not only won the 15 and over age division, but it won the 11 to 14 age division and the 10 and under age division as well, making for a clean sweep in every competition. Not only that though, because it was the Japanese secret deck too, it was a Japanese player that won every age division as well. It's hard to describe what an absolute domination this was for Maxi and his Magma Pokemon, but the fact that this hasn't happened in close to 20 years of World Championship action since, well, should help at the very least. But it doesn't stop there for Maxi, since he wasn't quite done yet. Since if we fast forward 11 years, he was getting ready to deal some absolute carnage to the Pokemon TCG again. Although this time, he wasn't going to get away with it so easily, as Pokemon themselves were keeping a very close eye. So if we were to fast forward to 2015 and the release of Primal Clash, this was the first set to have Maxi and Archie printed again. Although this time it was Archie who was most successful out of the gates. Archie's Ace in the Hole would let you grab a water type from the discard pile and pop it straight into play, then draw 5 cards. If Archie's was the last card in your hand when you played it, otherwise you couldn't play it at all. Now this sounds like a massive drawback, but trust me, once the player base knew how to build decks around this, it was child's play to pull off. Cards like Battle Compressor would discard your water type that you wanted to put in play, along with 1 copy of Archie's, and then whatever else. And after that, as long as you could play your hand down, you could then play VS Seeker to pick up the Archies, and there you go, you done it. And it didn't take long for Archie to start picking up some results, since it won German Nationals in 2015 and placed 3rd at US Nationals as well, paired with Flareon in Germany and Mega Manectric in the US. But both decks were using Archie to grab the same card, Empoleon. Empoleon had the diving draw ability, which would let you discard a card from your hand to draw 2 more. And its attack was very useful, dealing 10 for each Pokemon in play, for 1 water energy. Although Archie was just getting started, because by the time the World Championships rolled around, he was ready for his revenge. Maxi in the run up to 2015 Worlds saw pretty much no play. Archie however found his true partner in crime, Blastoise, and with Jacob Van Wagner at the helm, Archie took a commanding victory at the 2015 World Championships in scarily fast fashion, since Archie's would get Blastoise into play turn 1, allowing you to attach a ton of water energy onto Keldeo EX and swing for massive damage. Maxi saw Archie getting all the glory and was determined to get back to the tippy top of competitive play. And oh boy, he was going to. Maxi's hidden ball trick was functionally the same as Archie, but it only worked for fighting types. The first deck that utilised Maxi was the YGZ archetype. This deck utilised 3 different kinds of Yveltal to really put your pressure on your opponent. First one was Oblivion Ring Yveltal, since Oblivion Ring would one-shot a Joltik and a Pumpkaboo due to weakness, while accelerating a Dark Energy to one of your bench Pokemon, which worked perfectly with the other Yveltal, Fright Knight. This Yveltal had the ability Fright Knight, which would turn off the effects of tool cards while it was in the active. This would make life really hard for Mega Evolution decks that relied on Spirit Links to evolve without giving up their turn. But when Fright Knight was in the active, those Spirit Links got turned off, forcing the Mega Evolution players to give up a turn. Its attack Pitch Black Spear would do 60 to the active and 60 to a benched EX2. Again, making life so hard for Mega Evolution decks, or any other deck to be honest, since that 60 snipe damage would also KO a Shaman EX in 2 hits, while also bringing any EX into range of the 3rd Yveltal EX. Yveltal EX was capable of OHKOing anything in format with its attack Evil Ball, which did 20 plus 20 for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. So it was the perfect recipient of energy from Oblivion Ring. By this time though, Wise Cyclone was probably the main attack used, which did 90 damage while moving an energy attached from itself to the bench. This was perfect for preserving those precious double colourless energy for use later on Fright Knight or even Zoroark. Zoroark had the stupidly strong attack Mind Jack, which did 10 plus 30 for each bench Pokemon your opponent had in play, with 180 being the magic number in most circumstances. If your opponent had a full bench and you had a muscle band attached, you would swing for 190 damage, which was perfect in most scenarios. Stand-in would also let Zoroark jump into the active whenever you like, so you could surprise it out of nowhere. Some YGZ players would also play Zoroark Break, which would let you copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks for 1 darkness energy. This could be so awkward for decks to deal with, like Mega Mewtwo would really struggle for example. So that explains the Y and the Z in YGZ. But what was the G? Well, that's where Maxi comes in. Gallade was a stage 2 Pokemon, and it was the only Maxi target in the YGZ deck. And boy, it was a good one. It had the ability Premonition, which lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them in any way you like. This would give you immense knowledge to plan your turns out, and had insane synergy with Trainer's Mail, which would let you grab a trainer from your top 4 cards, or even Giovanni's Scheme, which would let you either do an extra 20 damage, or draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. This knowledge was invaluable for setting up your future turns, but the attack was equally as strong, since Sensitive Blade did 60 damage plus 70 if you played a supporter card this turn. 130 was a clean one shot on every one prizer in the format, and would one shot any fighting weak Pokemon like Mega Manectric EX. This gave the YGZ archetype another deadly angle, since you now had one shot potential on fighting weak Pokemon too. And this YGZ deck lit the standard format on fire, having multiple finishes at Nationals and lighting up the local scene too. However, as good as YGZ was, it wasn't good enough for old Maxi. He wanted more power. He wasn't going to get it in the standard format though, so he had to turn to the large card pool of Expanded. In Expanded, there was a really old Archeops card that had an insanely high power level but was never used, until people thought to combo it with Maxi. Archeops had the ability Ancient Power, which could stop your opponent from evolving any of their Pokemon while Archeops is out. Do you know how game breaking this is? When combined with Maxi, you could get Archeops into play turn 1, which would guarantee evolution decks like Flareon would just, well, immediately lose, making people twiddle their thumb. The deck that would abuse this Archeops combo was none other than Yveltal. Both the Fright Knight Yveltal and Yveltal EX were present, except this time they had Dark Packs to accelerate energy faster, Darkrai EX to provide free retreat, and Jirachi EX to make the Maxi combo even easier, since Jirachi would let you grab a supporter from your deck when you bench it. And when the community cottoned on to just how strong this was, it immediately won the Portland Regionals and then the San Jose Regionals too. At this point, TPCI had to do something because the expanded format was getting ruined, forcing people to play exclusively basic decks or give up. So they banned Archeops. This drastically reduced Maxi's playability, being reduced to just flinging Gallade into play for one prize decks like Vespiquen, Gyarados or even Aerodactyl. Although Maxi succeeded in catching TPCI's attention though, his shenanigans raised way too many eyebrows, and if we was to fast forward to the 2019 format, the release of Team Up, TPCI was set to preemptively ban Maxi from the expanded format, since they were too worried about the effects of Maxi in combination with Omstar, who would item lock your opponent if they had more Pokemon in play than you, or mainly Kabutops, which would support or lock your opponent if it was in the active, both of which were capable turn 1. And that was it for Maxi, the man who destroyed the Pokemon TCG twice. If you like that video, why don't you check out this video here where I go in depth about how Archie won Worlds that year, and make sure to check out this video sponsors Dragon Shield for the best accessories in the game. Make sure to use that link in the description and use code BURST to get 5% off. Also help support the channel as well. And make sure to check out Pokédex, who are very kind to send me some of the cards for this video. If you want a pre-built deck shipped to anywhere in the world as early as the next working day, well, you can only get that from Pokédex.